I start hearing the Zoom recording voice in my sleep. Not careful. All right, share screen. We'll come back to this one. All analyzers report severity. If you look at things like ESLint, which provides us findings, but we result in unknowns as far as their severity, we have an uneven experience depending upon which analyzer you're using. So some report severity, some don't. That's what this is intended to be, is to make it a more unified experience so that we can augment the data that is coming out of our underlying tools, and we get severity for everything, which could also include, and I hesitate to mention this, but maybe with input from our friends over in vulnerability research, Gitlab conscientiously disagrees with the ratings coming from the open source projects, and we override it with something else. That's what's in my head. Questions, comments, thoughts on scope, or at least big buckets of work to do.
I guess one big high level comment about this section of work is a lot of this is what I would call like the GitLab secret sauce of, sure, you can go run these analyzers yourself, but without the secret sauce that we've made, that we've pulled together, that we've assembled from our own vulnerability research team, it's just not as good. And so this is like a strategic area for us to compete with our competitors who are largely doing this same thing as well.
All right, I'm going to start typing. You'll tell me, and please, I'm looking for disagreement. I'm looking for where I'm wrong. Right now, when we are changing things like finding descriptions or titles, or we're modifying the data, for findings out of the underlying scanners, that's hard-coded, that's baked into Go source code files. Extract overrides into data file, whether that is JSON, XML. Yes, I said XML. Y'all don't shoot me for that. YAML, etc. That way it's a data file rather than something that's baked into source code. This includes severity, description, recommendation, update, read data file, that.
So there's a quicker way to do this that is less good. But what if we have all vulnerabilities reported from spot bugs, or sorry, let's say ESLint, because ESLint's unknown, as medium? Does it have to be an accurate severity?
Yes, I would like it to be accurate. This is one where I realized that like a bulk apply to something is maybe helpful as an intermediate step. but ultimately we need a way to inject our opinion, our research, our telemetry data into the scanners to make the findings more valuable.
And do we need to improve our scanners, or can we improve at an integration layer a remapping of the severities?
I am open to any ideas here.
Keep thinking. Where are you going with this? Or do you want to take over the mouse or take over the writing?
No, I think maybe as a secondary, there's two approaches. That would be the right approach if we controlled more of the underlying tools. For something like the Go analyzer, it's compiled with the rules included, so we'd have to recompile our own version to separate out a data file, which is not unheard of, but remapping as a post-processing step might be more easy to achieve the desired behavior. So we get the report gets reported back from GoSec, either our tool that wraps GoSec or the Rails app says, oh, this is rule 1234, which is reported as medium from GoSec. We're changing that to high.
I think that's what I was advocating for. Yeah, not that we would be manipulating the underlying tool itself, but as a post-processing step, as an output from its scan, we're amending or overriding
Okay,
its data.
I guess the bullet point of update analyzer source to read data file sounds like the long way around, rather than remapping to me.
Okay.
So maybe I was misunderstanding that.
The vocabulary definitions that I was using is the analyzer is the Gitlab artifact that is callable by a vendor template, and a scanner is an underlying tool that is utilized by the analyzer to do its detection.
Cool. We definitely didn't just have a conversation about this, so that makes sense.
All right. I'm trying to be consistent in the language that I am using, even if until we get it officially documented. So as a post-processing step for the analyzer, as an output from its scan, before we encode the report JSON file, these are overrides that are applied that would either override the data coming from the scanner, or it would amend it to add fields consistently. And the ones that I have seen most, I mean, for this, if you want severity, then you're talking about let's an override for severity based upon rule ID. You could, so this is certainly, but these are other fields that have been discussed before. Where, I mean, and like it's like for React within ESLint, we're not happy with the descriptions, so we've got an issue that's in flight right now to change the descriptions, and I know we do that elsewhere. And if we go with the workflow through Web IDE and we're wanting to provide recommendations for how to deal with this, then this would be a place that I would suggest we would do it. Keep it tied with the analyzer itself, I think. Anyway, I'm putting this forward as candidate scope. So with that being said, are we now saying the same thing? Is that this is there's not two right way and easy way, or is there just the way?
I think it's the same thing now.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the easy way is still just give a medium severity to all the ESLint findings. And definitely opposed to the right way.
That is true. That we could do that if the goal is to give a severity. It doesn't have to be a right severity initially. And I mean, I honestly think that could be an important first step if we want to go that way. I guess it's a question of perception of whether customers would prefer a unknown severity or medium in all cases.
If you as an engineer in this space see a unknown severity, what do you mentally map that to?
I map that to high or critical. But I feel like we had a similar discussion about confidence, and we now have confidence removed from our UI because people found that confusing. And we actually do map it unknown above critical currently. That's in our default sort within the UI. Unknown is critical because that has the highest potential. So we'd actually be downgrading the criteria for what these unknowns would be, but I still think it's worth recording as the easiest way.
You are already better than most engineers, in my opinion. If I saw unknown, I would absolutely ignore it. And in fact, we've heard that from customers when we do demos with them.
That hurts.
Okay. Noted. Okay, we got a hard way and the easy way. We'll swag both later. I hear that. I hear where you're going with that though. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else on this one? Okay. Generic scanners. Help.
So I'll just comment at a high level. Right now, this is living inside of the vulnerability research team. They've got a proof of concept of a Ruby on Rails generic scanner. The way that I think about this largely is we can continue to add open source scanners all day long, and at some point it will not be worth doing anymore. Instead, this is more looking towards the future of how would we go about doing a language in specific scanner that would be capable of looking for classes of vulnerabilities rather than specific implementations of them. This gets into some theoretical and conceptual concepts of like data flow and how programs execute and looking for like higher level types of vulnerabilities. There's a whole established field of research here. But thinking of this in terms of this would be another type of scanner we would support and could provide us potentially with very valuable secret sauce scanning that we could do on top of really any kind of scanning that we have capabilities of today.
So since this sits mostly in vulnerability research, I guess I'd be curious what we view our role in there, since I don't think that our team would have the purview of being able to write those rules, and we didn't write the engine. But there was an alternate proposal for the really dumb way is to not use a abstract syntax tree and instead just use a giant regex engine.
I don't like that answer, but I'm open to anything that would help materially move us forward. I realize I'm going to be cagey with this comment, but we are looking at a company right now that has a concept of this sort of generic data flow scanning that could be an interesting potential acquisition target. So there are many ways for us to skin this cat. This is more of one of, we need to have an opinion as a team and as the owners of static analysis of how we would support something like this coming into the fold. I mean, in one perspective, I think it just being another type of scanner that we support is certainly one way to do it.
Vendor template update for detection rules. Okay.
I guess that kind of goes back to the previous comment about CI recipes, but would vendor templates be what we want, or do we want kind of like a subset of a template?
Maybe I'm not following your question.
And if this gets too like nitty gritty, that's fine. But I would say that there's kind of like a distinction that we need to make between a template replaces the contents of a file, whereas something like the CI recipe idea, or we've talked a lot about like injecting a subset of, in the case of the CI configuration, YAML into the existing file. So I think that there's an important distinction to be made there between like a full replacement versus augmenting and modifying the files at a job level rather than a pipeline level, maybe. If this doesn't seem like something that's a distinction worth making right now, then we can move on.
I'm trying to follow it with all the voices in my head.
If I wanted to add a SAST job to my CI configuration today, we don't provide a mechanism to do that without replacing the entirety of the file. So the current way that templates work, templates are full file replacements rather than appending to an existing file. So that's the distinction with the CI recipes approach, would be injecting a snippet into the file. So in the case of vendor templates updates for detection rules, we kind of need a more concise modification of a file than we currently use as like a prerequisite to a lot of what we're talking about today.
Okay. I'm punting on that. I'm not fully, I'm mostly grokking what you're saying, but I'm not fully grokking it yet. So noted. Okay. All right. A favorite topic, splitting build and scan.
We need to audit which analyzers actually care about build.
Okay.
And we need to figure out how to either make the build step optional that you can disable with configuration, or we provide a analyzer in isolation, like a Debian package.
I'm translating. Tell me if I'm good, and wordsmith me as we go here.
Yep, that's good.
Okay. Does polling the group that's here, does this really simplify our work by a significant degree? I'm assumption checking.
I don't think it simplifies our work, but I think it makes our product more accessible to more customers.
That would be my perspective on this, is that this is the piece that we get bogged down the most with prospects and with customers trying to leverage our functionality. They get stuck on our best effort scan or a build process, not correctly building whatever monster they have somehow assembled. You're laughing, but you know it's true.
I love the description.
Okay.
And actually, that's not entirely the story. It would simplify work because we have to do things like figure out how to build some. If we never had to figure out how to build a Visual Basic project, and we said just give us your project and we'll scan it, then that could be easier. So there's a fair bit of effort we put into figuring out how to properly build a project.
Your commentary is invalid. You reference Visual Basic.
I'm sorry, Daniel's not on the call, so.
He's not working with Visual Basic either, I hope. But, right.
I mean, I'll just point out here that we definitely have competitors who don't even do build at all. You have to build it, zip up the resulting project, and then pass it over and upload it to their project or to their scanners. So I'm interested in ways to reduce this complexity, both from a customer experience point, but also us not having to care whatever scripts or things or bad practices customers are doing to build their projects.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Mono repo support. This keeps coming up. Update analyzers to detect. Dang it. Apologies. Audit analyzers to determine which only detect one project. Update analyzers to scan all detected.
So I'm not sure I quite follow this one.
So
Okay.
this sort of goes to the point of whatever way our customers build, we need to be able to support, and that extends to the way that they use project repositories. A common framework and pattern within the enterprise is these large mono repos. So there's a couple of problems to solve here from my perspective. There's one, when we encounter a mono repo, making sure that we know when to scan what and how to scan the various projects. This is one where we've had customers who might have as many as 20 or 30 of the same language or different languages in a single repo, different types of projects. At who knows what depth within that mono repository. There's then the problem of, depending on how customers contribute to that project, whatever their merging process is, making sure that we can support that. Some people do this whole branching or forking of a project, making your changes and then merging that back in, which could result in large MRs. So there's now like how do we handle large scans? And then when you merge that back into the master branch, that again is yet probably a large scan. So now we're into like the scan length and time problem. So that's kind of how I think about the mono repository piece.
So that seems like mostly just a performance consideration then. Is there any, are there specific UX considerations that we're talking about for a mono repo?
Yes, there are some that are going to be more on the vulnerability interaction side of, okay, cool. Now we're inside a single project that maybe has a lot of sub-projects. Now I have a project dashboard where I see all of my vulnerabilities, which effectively would be more like a group or an instance level dashboard. So providing the right filters to be able to actually make that dashboard usable. So yeah, there are other problems that are maybe a little outside of the scope for us, but we might need to put data in the right form or add a new type of identifier for, like, I don't know, what folder something is in or something along that line. Also, I think you may end up in issues of, and this is, I'm not quite sure how standalone vulnerabilities handles this, but do we end up with duplicate listings, and how do we handle the identification of those over time? But again, kind of tangential in the interacting with vulnerabilities, vulnerability management scope.
Unpacking a little further, are you questioning the need for this?
So I think that, like, as Taylor brought up, there's some interesting considerations. If you're trying to segment like results in your dashboard, that I don't think falls in our area. If we have bad performance or traversing too deeply into a application, that is definitely something we could work on. But I think that's more of a scanner by scanner basis. And in the case of the bullet you have here, that would be something like a inheritance on a POM XML file for Java or something. That more points to what I would consider to be a bug in how Spotbugs builds a project. So I'm still not sure I quite follow this as a monorepo problem, but that might just be me.
There is, I have not done a full audit, and this may not be current state. So with that very large caveat in front of this, we have some analyzers, and this is in our source code, and I think security code scan was the one that I'm aware of that was the most, that was guilty of this, where it would look for one project file and it would only scan that one directory, regardless if that was, as long as if it had sibling directories that were other projects that needed to be scanned as well. That is an example of where we are failing with monorepo support.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I would just consider that to be a bug in security code scan specifically.
Well, it's a bug in our wrapping of security code scan, because we pointed at that one directory as opposed to pointing it at everything. And then there is the performance implications, because if you imagine that this is a monorepo for n number of microservices, all of which deployed by different Kubernetes and Helm charts, yeah, then there's your performance problem. Or there's a performance problem, but okay. This may be just fixing a bug and making sure that we better support it.
I hope so. That would be easy.
I like easy. Okay. All right, squishy, vulnerability research improving rules. So in a nutshell, how do we have a vulnerability research team. How do we enable them to improve the detection, the rule set that we are making available to customers themselves? So this is something that we would be internal to GitLab, but it is also something that would be if I would hope and I would articulate that would be contributed back to those upstream to projects as well. Maybe not immediately, but it would be something that we want to contribute to the open source community. But how would we enable that?
I mean, I think we've talked about this, Thomas, before. Yeah. You introduce it on GitLab for a while, and then eventually, as you know, more and more rules come in, those rules that are for, gold customers or whatever eventually get pushed down to core. And then if it's on core, those then get pushed back to the community as like a PR for, those individual scanners, or yes, scanners, that's the right language.
Well, that's the language I'm using. Whether or not that's the officially sanctioned language is another story.
That's what I've been using too. And it's
Yeah.
a good way to delineate. But just, I don't know, segment the two.
Yeah. That's the way that I've seen this practice gone before, where it starts at your highest tier and then you release it to the community as a trailing, as something that trails at some point later. And it puts a stress on the organization to always be innovating, because you need to have something to continually get better and stay ahead of what's released. But in any case, that's a way to do this. That's a strategy. It's more a question of how do you enable this.
I mean, the other option is just not. I mean, this isn't really in the spirit of GitLab, but not contributing back to the scanners, where you just, well, we come up with these great rules. This is something, that is a value to us and gives us value. So we're going to keep it because we came up with it.
I mean, let's be frank, like that is something that we are absolutely going to do. I think it's one where in the long term of GitLab, across many years, yes, things are going to always move down to core. If that happens in 2020 or 2022 is a discussion we can have. I think this is one where today it's all or nothing on Ultimate. And I think this is one to start providing value down the tiers. And this is one too, where I expect that once we fully support this type of customizing rule sets, we will have customers who will propose rules. The community will propose rules, and thinking about how we incorporate that in. This is where the idea of like a rule pack might come in, where there are community contributed rule packs, there are GitLab created rule packs that click into our scanners to supercharge them, if you will.
I think this also ties into the telemetry question, which is we have data on findings that have been dismissed, so we just need to use that data.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the longer vision of we have visibility into what vulnerabilities are being dismissed, which ones are being remediated, and we should be able to use that telemetry data to power our severity or to recommend fixes or things like that nature. I think that's a little longer term, but 100% agree with you.
Well, I think prior to like using that data is longer term, but we need to get a framework in place to collect that data ASAP, so we have historical data to actually use when we need to.
Yep.
Okay. Lucas, you started articulating requirements for telemetry. Keep going.
SMAL. Do we have SMAL for SAST?
It's very hand wavy today, and based on the name of jobs, there's actually already an open issue for that.
Stage monthly active user.
Taylor,
failure rates for pipe jobs as well.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Repeat.
Yeah, failure rates for scans.
Okay. Hold there. Taylor, do you want to give the TLDR on SMAL and why we're paying it, why this is suddenly something you're seeing everywhere?
Yes. So basically, we had this realization probably a month ago. I think it was Sid doing whatever data exploration he was doing, realized that the more stages that a customer uses, the more likely they are to upgrade, or if they're a prospect, to actually convert into a customer. So the goal basically is, how do we get more customers using more of our functionality? This introduces the fun problem of, well, you have to have Ultimate to be able to use secure. So like we kind of break that nice cycle. So that's why this is coming up a lot. We also have proposed new North Star metrics for secure, which we agreed on basically across SAST, DAST, and a few other groups, which I can't remember off the top of my head, that basically is the total number of findings and then the way or the positive interactions with those findings. So for now, we're considering dismissing or remediating an issue a positive interaction, showing that you're engaging with a vulnerability. So taking that and dividing it by the total number of vulnerabilities as a engagement metric. So yeah, there's sort of two parts to that. One is we want to make sure we're finding real issues, not false positives. So we want the denominator to be as small as possible. But then we want to make sure that the things that we are finding, we provide the right information and context to decide to take action on it. So that's kind of how we're thinking about that from a stage perspective.
I'll throw one out there, scan duration. By analyzer.
I don't remember what the latest was on the scan model, but the idea of ignored resources and scanned resources, namely how much coverage we're actually getting with these scanners.
Would love that as something that we could expose in the UI. What's your code coverage for security scans? But is that lovable or is that complete?
So we do have that idea that right now is in the lovable category. I think this is one where if we found an easy way to do it, I'd be more than happy to pull that forward. I like the idea of code coverage. I think that's a really interesting way to think about what we do. And I think that also could provide us ways to solve other challenges when we do run into scan length issues of all of your code is not created equal and there are more vulnerable or risky sections. And if we could prioritize the scanning of those, we could cut through some of the noise. It also goes to the like, do I care about a vulnerability in a doc page? Probably not as much as my actual application.
All right, we can keep talking about telemetry some more. I think that's enough to start, I think, unless everybody's got some easy targets here. Or targets that come to mind. I said the wrong word.
I don't know if we actually have this, just per analyzer counts, as opposed to total SaaS jobs.
Per analyzer job counts? Okay.
This is something that now that those scanners are split out, we probably could do a one-time query with the analytics team for them to go and search through job logs. That's certainly something we could try to do today, but longer term, having actual metrics and telemetry on that would certainly be beneficial. And could also very strongly help us answer the question of what language should we care about the most.
I added its cousin per analyzer, customer counts, not just jobs, but customers. Okay, let's hold there on telemetry. We can certainly add or manipulate these, and wow, is it raining. Okay. This one, I want to come back to it. Is this anything? Yeah, well, look out. All right. Nice social experiment going on over here.
I did it too.
All right.
I don't even know where you're based. I know you're not in Austin, but I looked outside.
It's raining in South Carolina, and it is raining hard. Let me just put it that way. All right. Vulnerability research improving rules. Can we punt on this and just say we really need a discovery issue to figure out what this means? Or do we even know anything, or do we have any informed guess about what it could mean?
Is this part of SAST?
No, technically, because it is vulnerability research. But right now, vulnerability research is going and doing lots of really interesting and fascinating things, and there's no way for them to bring that back to us.
So the act of vulnerability research improving rules is not us. The mechanism by which vulnerability research can contribute improved rules is us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And hey, if we got to the point where it was so easy that you or me or anyone could contribute rules, like, I would like that future a lot.
It's kind of implied for everything here, but okay, I'm going to punt at that. We've been at this for a little bit. I filled this in. Benchmark projects, to me, that is not something that is a SAS or static analysis concern. However, we do need to get these run automatically as vulnerability research. Benchmark projects, to me, are owned by vulnerability research. It is in our best interest to integrate these into our build process, just like our integration tests are, or can be, to understand how well they are doing as we improve. Are we improving the product with updates that we're providing?
If y'all have not been following that project, it's very interesting to watch. They've already integrated their benchmark tool with Sisense, as well as they're triggering their build process or their run process anytime our scanners are updated. Right now, they only have one benchmark project for SAST, which is JSpring. I know we want to do more. They're working on implementing a sample of DAST as well right now.
Okay. And these are the, I mean, if there's any other impediments or things, or excuse me, regularly occurring jobs as far as things, types of work that classes of work that we are executing. To me, this needs to be tracked. It needs to be something that is articulated as well. So one of the bits of analysis I haven't done yet is what's our discovery rate? How much time are we spending on average each milestone on remediate or on resolving bugs? Because that's going to speak to that's a percentage of time that just needs to be accounted for, budgeted for, with some, with some variability involved. I mean, I know 13.0, we're spending a lot of time, or planning to spend a lot of time on updating analyzers. So this is a bit of a, this is a bit of an outlier, but how much time are we actually spending keeping our analyzers up to date or scanners up to date? That's the, that's something that I think we need to be aware of. And then, if we looked at community contributions that are open today against SAST, we had 7. And yes, they're old, and no, they're not all that we want to include. But it's effort. And so So those are the big buckets of work that I'm seeing that we need to keep up with. Are there others? The one that just came to mind. And I'm punting on name, cross-stage collaboration, because we've got common. I mean, that's a shared custodial library. Keeping up with that's what we're going to have to keep in mind. And there's other things that are going to prop up along those lines.
I think that for these, the dependency update treadmill and community management and cross-stage collaboration, we often end up talking about things like needing consensus and needing to have discussions about these things, and that probably won't change. But I guess based on the point I was raising in Slack earlier, I feel like we need to have decisions documented on what is our dependency update target. Do we pin to the minor, major, and the underlying tool? Do we bump weekly or quarterly? Same thing with community management. Like what do we accept and what don't we accept? So we don't really have guidelines for a lot of these things. Bug is easy. No feature is undesired. But the other ones, I think that we need a decision on how to approach those topics to understand better how to achieve progress on them.
Yep. You're calling for handbook updates to provide guidelines that we can point people to. Okay. I'm going MR first on that. So what I'm doing, all right, let me get dangerous. What I'm doing Thursday is I'm putting up an MR that is going to create a static analysis group handbook page that sits underneath Secure, where we can start articulating things that are static analysis concerns. And I'm going to start with these. I want to talk about workflow because we're going more to a pull-based mechanism. I want to put that up as something that static analysis is doing. I'll put up also a target, and Taylor, I'm going to add this to our one-on-one. So what's our target as far as keeping up to date? Is it quarterly? I mean, that's a good call out. We'll put that down. And also these are the kinds of how to engage with us on community management, which is the most squishy. What are we going to accept? What are we not? We can start there. Those are artifacts that we can start pointing to. So I hear what you're saying. I completely agree. It's been I'm trying to lean in on handbook time, and so MR is finally going to be ready on Thursday.
Cool. And if it's not an MR, that's completely fine as well. We just need somewhere. We need a public document that we can point people to continue a conversation.
Yeah.
And issues are great as well, because as long as they can see the discussion, the rationale that we made decisions for, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just wanting it on MR. I'm wanting it within the handbook because I need space for it already. And that way we can call it out. I mean, that way it's there. It's discoverable. It's Googleable. It's more easily Googleable. Anything else? How's everybody feeling about this scope? Ambitious? Too ambitious? Too cautious?
Good.
All right.
One thing that I'll add to just close out here is that this is always going to be a moving target. If you have an amazing shower idea or otherwise have thoughts of, hey, we could try this other thing, I definitely want to hear those. This list basically is where my head has been for the past probably 2 or so months. And this is kind of what I think about all day, every day. So as y'all have ideas, I want to hear them.
Okay. All right. We'll close out. Here's what tomorrow is going to be. So I am taking this list. I am putting it into another favorite managerial artifact, also known as the spreadsheet. That is going to enable, so I was asking everybody in the static analysis weekly about deck scoring. So is it defined? How much effort is it? How complex is it? And these are t-shirt size, small, medium, large for each one of those three. This translates into some rough point values that we can start talking about as far as kind of effort and how squishy some of these ideas are, which will be some information we can get back to Taylor about how big these things are. That's what tomorrow is about. That's why the effort was on today. But you already knew that. So we will not be walking. We'll be walking the output of this conversation. It's just going to be in a different format. And we'll be doing that tomorrow. So thank you for everybody sticking around and being a part of this. I appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and adjourn 2 hours later. Thank you. Have a good night. We'll talk tomorrow for those that can be here. See you.